I've been actually invited. A chauffeur in a uniform rubbing his blue crossed my lawn early this Saturday morning, with a surprisingly formal enough from his employer. The honor will be entirely Gatsby's, he said, if I'll attend this little party tonight. He has seen me several times and had intended to call on me long before, but a peculiar combination of circumstances had prevented it. Signed, J. Gatsby, in a majestic hat. Dressed up in my flannels, I went over to his lawn a little after 7, and wandered around rather elated among swords and eddies of people I didn't know, though here and there was face I had noticed in the coming train. I was immediately struck by the number of young Englishmen dotted about, all well dressed, all looking a little hungry, and all talking in low earnest voices to solid and prosperous Americans. I was sure that they were selling something, bonds or insurance or automobiles. They were, at least, agonizingly aware of the easy money in the vicinity, and convinced that it was theirs for a few words in the right key. As soon as I arrived, I made no attempt to find my host, but the 2 or 3 people of whom I asked his whereabouts stared at me in such an amazed way, and denied so vehemently any knowledge of his movements that I slunk off in the direction of the cocktail table, the only place in the garden where a single man could linger without looking purposeless and alone. I was on my way to get roaring drunk from sheer embarrassment when George Baker came out of the house and stood at the foot of the steps, leaning a little backward and looking with contemptuous interest down into the garden. When coming out, I found it necessary to attach myself to someone before I should begin to address cordial remarks to passers-by. "Hello," I roared, advancing toward her. My voice seemed unnatural now across the garden. "I thought you might be here," she responded absently as I came up. "I remembered you live next door to." She held my hand impersonally, as promised that she'd take care of me in a minute, and gave ear to the girls in 2 yellow dresses who stopped at the foot of the steps. "Hello," they cried together. "Sorry didn't win. That was for the golf tournament. She lost in the finals the week before." "You don't know who we are," said one of the girls in yellow. "But we met you here about a month ago. You've dyed your hair since then," remarked Jordan. And I'm sorry, but the girls had moved casually on, and her remark was addressed to the permissioner, for just like the supper. The dove out of Carol's basket, with Jordan's slender garden round resting in mine, we descended the steps and sounded about the garden. A trail of cocktails floated at us through the twilight, and we sat down at a table with the 2 girls in yellow and the 3 men, each one introduced to us as Mr. Mumbles. "Do you come to these parties often?" inquired Jordan of the garden-sider. "The last phone was the one I met you at," answered the girl in a loud, confident voice. She turned to her companion. "Wasn't it for you, Lucille?" "It was for Lucille, too." "I'd like to come," Lucille said. "I never care what I do, so I always have a good time. When I was here last, I turned my gown on a chair, and he asked me my name and address. Inside a week, I got a package from Quarriers with a new evening gown in it." "Did you keep it?" asked Jordan. "Sure I did. I was going to wear it tonight, but it was too big in the bust and had to be altered. It was gas blue, with lavender beads, $265. There's something funny about a fellow that would do a thing like that," said the other girl eagerly. "He doesn't want any trouble with anybody." The 2 girls and Jordan leaned together confidentially. "Somebody told me they thought he killed a man once. A threat passed over all of us." The 3 Mr. Mumbles and bent forward and listened eagerly. I don't think it's so much that, argued Lucius skeptically. It's more that he was a German spy during the war. One of the men nodded in confirmation. I heard it from a man who knew all about him, grew up with him in Germany, he assured us positively. Oh no, said the first girl. It couldn't be that, because he was in the American army during the war. As our credulity switched back to her, she leaned forward with enthusiasm. You look at him sometimes when he thinks nobody's looking at him. I'll bet he killed a man. She narrowed her eyes and shivered. Lucille shivered. We turned and looked around for Gatsby. It was testimony to the romantic speculation he inspired that there were whispers about him from those who found later that it was necessary to whisper about his word. The first supper, there would be another one after midnight, was not being served, and Jordan invited me to join our own party. We were spread around the table on the other side of the garden. There were three married couples and Jordan's escort, a persistent undergraduate given to violent innuendo, and obviously under the impression that Jordan was going to yield him up per person to a greater or lesser degree. Instead of rambling, this party had preserved a dignified homogeneity, and assumed instead the function of representing the thin nobility of the countryside, instead condescending to Westhead, and carefully on guard against its spectroscopic gaiety. Let's get out, whispered Jordan, after a somehow wasteful and inappropriate half hour. We got up, and she explained to me that we are going to find the host. I had never met him, she said, and it was making me uneasy. The undergraduate nodded in a cynical, melancholy way. The bar, Mary glanced first, was crowded, but Gatsby was not there. She couldn't find him from the top of the stairs, and he wasn't on the veranda. On the chance, we tried an imprudent-looking door, and walked into a high gaudy library, paneled with carved English oak. And transported completely from submarine overseas. A stout, middle-aged man with enormous owl-eyed spectacles was sitting somewhat drunk on the edge of a great table, staring with unsteady concentration at the shelves of books. As we entered, he wheeled excitedly around and examined Jordan from head to foot. What do you think? He demanded impetuously. About what? He waved his hand toward the bookshelves. About that. As a matter of fact, it's neither matter to ascertain. I ascertain they're real. The books? He nodded. Absolutely real. There are pages and everything. I thought they'd be a nice Durban bar cardboard. Matter of fact, they're absolutely real. Pages and everything. Here, let me show you. Taking our skepticism for granted, he rushed to the bookcases and returned with volume 1 of the Sutter lectures. See, he cried triumphantly. It's a bona fide piece of printed matter. It fooled me. This philosopher Velasco. It's a triumph. What thoroughness, what realism. The went stopped, didn't cut the pages. But what do you want? What do you expect? He snatched the book from me and replaced it hastily on his shelf, muttering that if one brick was removed, the whole library was liable to collapse. I brought you, he demanded. Or did you just come? I was brought. Most people are brought. Jordan looked at him alertly, cheerfully, without answering.